Hello everyone, I'm Kibitz and welcome back to Satisfactory, where today I'll be going over 5 tips and tricks with water extractors and pipes. And if you find any of these useful, remember to leave a like and subscribe. Because oh man, you can learn a lot more about this game by watching my Let's Play series on it. But anyway, let's get into the tips here. So the first one is how to make the most efficient water extractor setup possible. And all you have to do really is set up 3 water extractors and change the clock speed of each of them to 84%. That way you can fill up a pipe with a max 300 cubic meters of liquid, and also underclocking all of the water extractors saves you actually a bit of power, which is pretty dang important when you're making your first coal setups and stuff like that. And then the next tip is kind of twofold. It's how to understand what's going on with your pipe network. And the main thing is when you see this part of your pipe, this is actually measuring the flow rate in the pipe. And whenever the rings are fully spread out on the pipe, that means that the flow rate is at its maximum, or the pipe is just straight up full. And that way you can look over huge pipe systems and see where the problem is pretty quickly. And just another visual tip here, but for the pumps, you can always tell which direction they're gonna pump in based off of where these guys are facing. So, since they're kind of facing upwards, like if you imagine that's an arrow, you can tell the flow rate of the pumps is going in that direction. So when you're building them as well, you don't have to look out for that green little arrow, because sometimes it's hard to see with all the madness going on. And instead, you can just see where those little tubes are facing, and that might just help you out building your pump system. And holy, that might seem like a small thing, but once you start going crazy with pumps, oh my gosh, that little visual aid helps out a ton. And speaking of pumps though, did you know you can attach the pumps to walls? So if you're making a huge vertical pipe, you can just put all the pumps on the wall first, and then you can hook up all the pipes second. By the way, to make sure the head lift is all good with the pipes, usually if you go about 3.5 wall segments, so that's 1, 2, 3, and about a half here, you shouldn't have any flow rate issues, because each pump can pump liquids 4 wall tiles high. So by going about 3.5 wall tiles high, not only will you guarantee the system to work, but also you leave yourself a little bit of a margin for error. And trust me, you're gonna want that. Better to have it a little overkill than ruin an entire pump tower and have to rebuild it. Trust me, I know firsthand. And on the subject of advice, I guess this is more so a trick than a tip, but I get a lot of questions asking, should I use a train to transport liquids back to base, or should you just pipe it all back to base? And if you want the honest technical answer, piping is better. You are directly sending materials to your machines. And so long as your pumps are done right, it should work perfectly. Of course, there's the obvious huge drawback of having to build 20 billion pipelines. And also there's the hassle of setting up like 1,000 different pumps. But man, oh man, does a large pipeline project look dang good, brother. But then compare that to the trains though. The trains always are looking spicy, and with the new fluid wagons, whew, they're one of the coolest new additions to the game. And also, fluid trains are pretty dang good too. After the recent experimental build, they can carry up to 1,600 cubic meters of any fluid. However though, if you're bringing a fluid from one side of the map to the other, you're gonna have what's called a throughput issue, and your machines are probably not gonna run super well, so you run into that issue. And really that's the only downside of using trains. Like, there are ways to solve the throughput issue with them by like setting up multiple fluid trains to gather from the same source, or by packing the fluid, so you can make it work, so it's really up to you to decide. Personal preference though, I'd go with the trains. Mainly because trains go choo. But now for the final tip here, and that is to really consider setting up your base next to a giant water source. Because water is fundamentally important to the game since Update 3 was launched. Arguably as important as like copper. Because not only do you need water to set up coal plants, and you'll need tons of water for nuclear, but what I consider the most important thing is you're gonna need water for ore doubling. Because you can find alternate recipes through drop pods, and you can find alternate pure recipes. So for example, the pure copper ingot turns 15 copper ore into 37.5. In fact, that more than doubles the amount of copper you're getting per ore. But yeah, you just have to add water. But not only that, you can double your caterium, your iron ingot production, your quartz production, and your oil production with this diluted fuel recipe. but this is a lot more difficult to mess around with. So you'll want to check out my turbo fuel tutorial to find out more about this. Anyway though, that's all I have for you today. So if you found any of this useful, please remember to leave a like and subscribe for more. But again, that's gonna be all. So have a fantastic rest of your day, and bye-bye.